Welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast, where we talk with the people behind the current events and breakthroughs in brain implants in an understandable way, helping bring together various fields involved in neuroprosthetics. Here is your host, Laden Yurachek.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast. Today's guest is Jeremy Greenberg, and he works for the Future of Privacy Forum, which is a nonprofit in Washington, D.C. And he just wrote a report, which has other co-authors as well, understanding the data flows and privacy risks of brain-computer interfaces. So looking into privacy management and a little bit neuroethics. And neuroethics is something that we definitely cover a lot on the show. Jeremy, thanks so much for coming on. And thanks so much for penning this 42-page report. And if I have to say, it has 221 references. So you guys definitely worked hard on this. So welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. And I knew we had a lot of references. I didn't know it was quite that many, but I appreciate you calling that out, definitely.
Yeah, very cool. Do you want to introduce yourself? Because you're not a neuroscientist. You're working in a Washington, D.C. nonprofit. So who are you and how did you get into this writing?
Yeah, definitely. So I am a policy counsel with Future of Privacy Forum. We're a DC-based nonprofit think tank, and we bring together industry, academics, thought leaders, and advocates looking to promote responsible data use in emerging technology. So we are definitely very future-facing as an organization. My background is I am a lawyer by training. I am a law school graduate. I'm a member of the bar, but I've never actually worked in a traditional legal job. I have always worked in the more policy-oriented space in DC. And yeah, this was a really fascinating project for us. About 2 years ago, so back pre-pandemic, I was working on a number of issues involving AI and machine learning and looking at some of the privacy risks and ethical challenges there. And we were just looking at some interesting applications that intersected with AI and machine learning. And one of those was neurotechnology. And we felt that there were a lot of questions involving neurotech and brain-computer interfaces. There were a lot of really fascinating privacy risks out there. So this was definitely in our wheelhouse at FPF. We decided that we wanted to write this report. We did a lot of initial research, a lot of outreach to experts in this space. As you mentioned, I am not a neuroscientist. I'm not a neuroethicist, but we were able to make connections with folks who were experts in that area. We brought our knowledge as privacy professionals, and we were really looking to create a primer or a document for a few different audiences here. One is privacy professionals looking to learn more about brain-computer interfaces and neurotech. Another is regulators in the US and abroad who are thinking about privacy legislation or best practices. And then the third audience is just interested folks who want to learn more about this really fascinating area. So yeah, as you said, I'm not a neuroscientist, not a neuroethicist, but I got the opportunity to interact with some great ones. And yeah, we decided to put out this report.
That's really cool. And then you guys got a very big partner to help you guys out with this as well, right?
Yes, we did. We branded and published with IBM, which was really great. They really brought a lot of expertise, especially related to the neuroscience. They have a lot of technical engineers on staff, also a lot of really accomplished policy folks. They have a great legal compliance staff. And yeah, they were able to definitely work with us on those details in particular. That was a really great experience for us. And yeah, we really value that collaboration.
Okay. So let's go into it. Let's dive in a little bit. So maybe a little bit introduction. I guess we can basically go with the different parts. So what is neurotech going to be used for? What are the potential applications? What are the potential risks? Yeah. Do you want to go through?
Yeah, definitely. So when it comes to neurotechnology, a major application we're seeing today with brain-computer interfaces is definitely in the health space. And that is used for things like diagnosis, accessibility, using brain-computer interfaces for control of prosthetic limbs or external devices, as well as use for mitigating various symptoms, such as those felt by Parkinson's patients. So that's a major use case, and we definitely wanted to touch on that. And at FPF, we're also very interested in a lot of consumer application and looking at privacy risks in the consumer space. And we've seen that these technologies are starting to appear in that consumer-facing space. So a major space we talk about is also gaming and entertainment. We touch on augmenting various gaming platforms related to virtual reality with brain-computer interfaces. This is something that's starting to happen in the prototype phase. So you now have an additional sensor on a headset that might be collecting neurodata. We also look at some prototypes being used in the education space, monitoring student attention levels. We're also focused on employment, looking at brain-computer interfaces for monitoring workers, potentially modulating workers' nervous systems as well. We also focus on brain-computer interfaces in the smart cities space. That's especially future-facing. So using brain-computer interfaces for advanced communication between construction teams, or even as a tool in connected vehicles. And then also we touch on BCIs in the government and military space as well. You have a lot of research happening with DARPA. So we talk about all of those different use cases, and for each, we try to identify some key privacy risks. And this was a big challenge for us because a lot of this technology is future-facing, and it's hard to accurately identify the prominent risks that we're going to see in the near term. A lot of times when folks talk about the risks in this space, especially in popular news media, it goes into science fiction territory, risks that might come about in hundreds of years if we ever get there. These devices today cannot read someone's exact thoughts. They cannot pump knowledge directly into someone's brain. This is sometimes how they're portrayed in popular media. So we tried to concentrate on some of the risks we're seeing today, as well as likely near-term risks. A lot of that relates to just where the research is going, looking at risks that are occurring in other fields involving technology and seeing how those might map onto brain-computer interfaces. But yeah, a lot of the risks in this space really stem from the fact that neurodata, which we could be talking about recording neurodata, modulating neurodata. This is sensitive personal information. This is biological. It relates to mental privacy. These devices can be used to derive inferences about a person's likes, their dislikes, their fears, arousal, emotions. So this involves very sensitive and intimate details or inferences about an individual. Risks are then magnified when decisions are made that impact an individual based on the recording of this neurodata. For example, deciding what content to serve or not serve a person based on recording this data, deciding whether or not someone should be hired or fired from a job, making decisions about whether someone is a strong or struggling student based on the collection of this data. Accuracy concerns aside, this is really a major privacy risk. You have that recording of sensitive data, but then when you're making decisions that impact a person based on that data, that's when risks are really magnified. You also have a set of risks related to modulating a person's neurodata. A lot of concerns here are related to security, the idea of being able to hack a device that could be modulating someone's neurodata for a health purpose. So you could be putting someone's health in jeopardy. Yeah, there are a lot of privacy risks here. Some are specific to certain applications, but those are some of the privacy risks that really impact these technologies broadly and areas that we're very concerned about.
Okay. Yeah, very cool. This is a nice overview of everything. So I guess going off of that, which area is the most concerning?
I would say that today, at least for me, what might keep me up at night really relates to the consumer space. I think that the health space involving this technology, the risks are definitely there, the potential to hack a medical device. But in the health space, in a lot of situations, you have a lot of regulations in place. You might have HIPAA in place. There are certain protections granted by GDPR, which is the comprehensive privacy law in Europe. This is definitely a regulated area. But when it comes to some of these other sectors or other areas, we really lack a lot of regulation. So, for example, in the gaming space, maybe I'm playing a virtual reality game and my neurodata is being collected. And that collected neurodata, along with maybe other biological data or other biometric data, is combined with the stimuli or content that I'm experiencing in a game. And it's really through combining that data that a very granular profile can be built about me, my likes, my dislikes, my fears, my arousal. And to me, what's really concerning is today we have profiles of users. If I am on the 2D web, if I'm on, a social media site and I'm liking certain content, disliking content, clicking on certain articles or certain media over others, a company could build a very detailed profile about me and gain insight into who I am as a person, what I'm like, my interests, my proclivities. But when it comes to the collection of neurodata, a lot of that is involuntary by the individual. When I'm online, I'm clicking, I'm making an intentional action, but it is much more difficult for a person to be intentional with their thought. What is happening with their neurodata is just something that is happening in their body. It's just part of living. So it's that collection of involuntary data that definitely is very concerning and I think creates a lot of risks there. And with that, you have limited user control, the ability for a user to control what they're revealing, how they're revealing it. So really, I think that the involuntary nature of this data is something that I think is really concerning for privacy.
Yeah, like we're leaving digital fingerprints everywhere and we might not necessarily want to be doing that. So should we just ban neurodata? Are there any benefits? Are there any upsides to this? And what are the upsides?
Yeah, there definitely are upsides. So in the health space, obviously, the use of brain-computer interfaces and neurodata can be used to treat a number of conditions, provide enhanced accessibility, diagnosis. Even in the consumer-facing spaces, there are benefits. For example, in gaming, the ability to create a really interactive experience that's especially fun or tailored to the user. In education, potentially this data could be used to better map a particular lesson to a students' cognitive needs or abilities. There definitely are benefits, but there are a lot of risks as well. And in terms of should we ban this technology, I mean, that's a question that we absolutely should be asking. A hope that we have with this report is if a regulator or a policymaker were to read this, that really gets them started with having those conversations, meeting with experts in the field, with neuroethicists, with neuroscientists, having those conversations, seeing what are the real risks here, what are the privacy risks, as well as other ethical risks as well. Can we regulate this in a responsible way so we can maximize some of these benefits while mitigating some of these risks? After having those discussions, after thinking through all of the issues, if it's decided it's best to maybe ban this technology, then that's the way regulators are going to treat this. But yeah, I think it's definitely something that regulators need to be thinking about, whether or not the benefit outweighs the risk, or whether or not our regulations can properly tackle these issues. It's especially difficult because there are so many ethical questions with this technology, likely beyond what can be achieved in a statute. So Yeah, I think it's the kind of thing where smart conversations need to be had before deciding to ban this technology. But yeah, it's definitely an option that we could take.
Yeah, for sure. And a country actually did this recently. Do you want to talk about Chile?
Yeah, definitely. So Chile is really taking a lead when it comes to NeuroRights. So they have both a constitutional amendment and a bill. Right now in Chile, as part of the constitution, mental privacy is considered a right under Chile's constitution. So this is definitely an area that regulators in Chile feel is worth providing rights around. You also have this bill in Chile, and this bill regulates neurotechnology in such a way that it creates a number of rights for consumers around these technologies and a number of requirements for companies. So some of these rights and requirements include requirements that companies obtain expressed opt-in consent from a user prior to using a neurotechnology. There are various requirements involving notice. So notifying the user of not only how this technology might be used or how data might be used or shared or stored, but of the potential harms involved with this technology. There are also rules around how long a company can hold neurodata or store this data. Perhaps most interesting, the bill in Chile regulates neurodata as an organ under Chilean organ transplant law. Sometimes when folks talk about this bill, they talk about it in almost an abstract way where they say, oh, neurodata is going to be regulated like an organ. But it's actually very specific what they're doing. They're regulating this data as an organ under a specific law in Chile. And this would create all sorts of rights and requirements around the use of this technology. We'll see where this law goes. It likely will continue to be amended. But I think that the fact that these conversations are happening in Chile, the fact that they are regulating this technology, really should send a signal that these are some real privacy risks, and it is worth thinking through how we might legislate or regulate these risks. And this Chilean approach is definitely gaining traction around the world. You have Spain release their digital rights charter, which provides an insight into how the Spanish government is thinking about these neurotechnologies or thinking about various technologies and data. And there's a specific section dedicated to NeuroRights in that charter. So this definitely is gaining traction. Chile is taking the lead. And yeah, we'll see where this goes. Maybe the UN will take an interest in this area, maybe the US at some point. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth tracking what's happening in Chile to get a sense of what some regulators and some experts think when it comes to these risks.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's nice look into the future of what might be going on. Why especially Chile? What spurred this? What caused them to do this?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. So I've talked to a few folks who are closely following what's happening in Chile. And from what I understand, the Chilean government is looking to really have an impact on the tech landscape in general. Chile has gone through a lot of political changes recently. There's this move to push forward in terms of rights and approaches to human rights. So from what I understand, Chile actually approached an academic group at Columbia, the Columbia NeuroRights Initiative, and in particular, Dr. Rafael Yuste, who's based at Columbia, who is one of the leading thinkers when it comes to neuroethics. And he's produced a number of influential papers on the topic. So Chile really approached this scholar and said, we really want to regulate this technology. So when you look at Professor Yuste's writings, a lot of his values and his thoughts on ethics are reflected in the law. It's been very interesting. A lot of folks point to Chile and wonder why Chile. Chile is not a major producer of these technologies. It's not a major consumer of these technologies. why Chile? And it really seems like it's an effort to be on the cutting edge when it comes to human rights. And it very much aligns with what they're trying to do at the Colombia NeuroRights Initiative. So it really it really sprung from there, as far as I know. And when you hear Professor Yuste talk about these issues or read some of his writing, there really is this hope that sort of the next step with this stuff is we'll pass some NeuroRights in Chile, and then hopefully this moves to the UN. Maybe it draws the attention of the EU. There's a more global focus on these issues. So yeah, it's been very fascinating. It definitely took a lot of folks aback, the fact that this was happening in Chile of anywhere in the world. But yeah, they're definitely taking the lead, and a lot more folks are focused on Chile in this space than they were a couple of years ago.
So what are the takeaways? What should companies learn from this? What should they be doing in the future?
Well, we provide a mix of both technical and policy solutions. So in terms of technical solutions, a lot of companies should be looking at current Internet of Things devices, smart home assistants, devices that are tracking ample data, some of which is biometric or related to the human body. And they should look at what are the best practices in that space and how might this be mapped to these neurotechnologies. For example, think that some initial steps that companies should take is to provide a hard on-off switch where practical. We have these devices today, especially in the smart home arena, that are always on or potentially could be collecting data when the user is unaware. So giving that user that level of control is really important. And having many of these devices, especially in the consumer space, will have a companion app providing granular user control. Of course, it should not be only up to the user to protect their own privacy. The companies are the ones with the technical expertise, with the knowledge. They should be also acting responsibly, but the user should have granular and manageable controls as well. When it comes to the transfer of data, encryption is very important, especially with sensitive information like neurodata. This should be encrypted in transit and at rest. So we have a number of technical recommendations. In terms of policy recommendations, we have some other best practices. So we think that companies or organizations or governments should not be making decisions that have legal consequences based on the collection of this neurodata. There are a lot of accuracy concerns. There are a lot of conversations that need to be had about applying this sort of data to these decisions. But we think that organizations should not be making decisions like hiring or firing or decisions based on, whether someone is a strong or struggling student, decisions based around whether or not someone can obtain government benefits based on the collection of this data. So we say that this neurodata or these devices should not be used to make those types of decisions that truly impact individuals. Other policy decisions, we think that an institutional review board, an IRB, or even a less formal ethical review board is really important for companies. You have in the AI and machine learning space a lot of companies who've created their set of ethical principles and an internal review board that brings together experts from a number of areas. This could include the scientists, legal, policy folks, even marketers, product teams, to discuss the ethical concerns involving this technology. Along with that, there should be a co-participatory relationship between the companies developing this technology or using this technology and the general public who might be encountering this. So you might include early adopters and tech enthusiasts, but also folks who typically do not encounter this technology or have yet to encounter it, but might in the future. Having those dialogues, having those discussions about ethics. What are folks worried about with this technology? And companies should be integrating this feedback into their product. If there's a particular privacy concern involving a community, companies should be looking to address that during the design and rollout process. And in some situations, communities might say, we don't think this technology provides a real benefit here, or we think the risks so far outweigh the benefits that we don't want to encounter this technology or use it. Companies should be willing to potentially scrap a project based on that feedback. So having that feedback is really important. We provide a number of other recommendations as well. Obviously, transparency to users is really important. We still have not gotten that right in the 2D space online. So we have a lot to think about when it comes to neurotechnology, certainly. Those are just some places to start, some places for companies to start thinking about these issues, having those conversations. Yeah, and we include a number of other recommendations in the report.
Wow. Yeah, I think this is really interesting, very fascinating stuff. Yeah, Jeremy, I've really enjoyed this. If people want to look at the report, it's online. I have it linked in the show notes. Are there any final thoughts, any takeaways that you wanted to mention?
Really, just with this technology, I think something that's really important is for folks who want to learn more, who really want to take a deep dive into this stuff, is to definitely separate fact from fiction. There's so much hype around this technology, especially in news media. There are all of the sort of bombshell stories involving this technology. It's often framed as a device that can allow a user to download their memories, or it can read your exact thoughts. We're not there yet. So I think it's really important as a first step when it comes to folks just thinking about this stuff or learning more, or companies developing this technology, or regulators looking to regulate it, really separating that hype from what's actually happening in the field. I think that's a really important first step to learn and think about what's happening in this space, and realizing that a lot of the privacy questions we have today with the 2D web and with tech we interact with every day, a lot of those same questions are prevalent here. So looking towards those past examples and seeing, okay, if we don't like the way that privacy has been handled online or related to devices, this is an opportunity to get in the door early on before this technology is widespread and start to integrate a number of solutions that can hopefully mitigate some of these privacy risks. But to do so, I think an understanding of sort of what this technology can and can't do, and where this technology is likely to go in the near term, I think that's really an important first step in order to do all of those things.
Yeah, definitely. That's my opinion too, is very rarely do things like completely change as they progress. It's more or less more of the same. And what we were saying is that we have these issues or these questions with 2D web and online or whatever. So really, if anything, it's just going to be more of the same, but different, as they say in Thailand. And it's just grow from there. We can make our own destiny. And I'm also very much on the side of it's hard to limit stuff. Like once the cat's out of the bag, you can't put the cat back in the bag. I don't know. But basically the companies need to figure it out themselves, but legislation is often very slow and hindering, but at the same time, the companies can't necessarily self-regulate because that also doesn't necessarily work. So you need the balance, and that's a little bit what the report is about. So Jeremy, this has been really good. I've really enjoyed this. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. This has been excellent.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Hope you enjoyed the show and were able to learn something new, bringing together different fields in novel ways. Until next time on the Neural Implant Podcast.